Mr. Burger, Chapter 1. Let's be frank, James. The rotund, balding man adjusted his glasses, clearly amused with his joke. He scoured the page in front of him, seemingly to find some information he may have overlooked. Ian was losing what little patience he had left. The only bits of information of note on said page were his home address, high school/college education, his contact information, and his name. One of these was impossible to screw up, but lo and behold, just like every teacher, doctor, and acquaintance who hadn't seen him in a year, Ian was yet again being called by his last name. He understands the confusion, but does tend to hold a bit of a grudge against anyone who does so. Before he could correct him, Frank spoke back up quickly. "I guess you didn't get it. It's okay. These kids don't get my jokes either." Ian opened his mouth to protest, but Frank had begun the all-too-familiar line of questioning. "So, why do you want to work at Unreal?" Ian was lost in his own head for a moment. He honestly didn't want to work at Unreal. The new wave fast food joint was becoming a staple of the American middle to low-class diet. Over the past 5 years, they went from a popular little diner in California to the fastest-growing restaurant chain in the country. Cheap veggie burgers, decent fries coated in MSG and salt, and a fairly ruthless advertising campaign denouncing other chains for their animal cruelty. That last one was the biggest draw. After the 5th documentary about their farming and processing came out, most of the bigger chains had to deal with the public's outcry for sustainable and animal-friendly methods of sourcing their meat. The Colonels were out within a year. They couldn't find a decent substitute that their patrons would keep coming back for. A few, like the Arches and Crowns, survived with plant-based substitutes, charging extra for real beef and chicken. The hashtag fast-foodocalypse had claimed many victims, but there was one clear winner: Unreal. Money. The words were out of his mouth before the train of thought that was in his head kept up with him. Well, damn it. He really needed to focus. This was the last place he was interviewing today, and he really did not want to go home empty-handed. Excuse me. What I meant to say is that I need a better paying job. Despite what they tell you, those delivery app jobs don't really pay that well. Frank seemed satisfied with that answer and moved on. "Your boy Cody says you know the area pretty well?" Cody, Ian's friend, was the only reason he got an interview in the first place. Ian was quick to respond. "Yeah, I used to work with him at Slick Jim's. He ran the line and I ran the food." Ian threw in a quick chuckle to ease Frank's demeanor. Surprisingly, it worked. Frank gave a quick laugh, slapping his desk. Ian was in. He could tell. "That's good stuff, James. Good stuff. Tell me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Ian's mind raced. The hell was he going to say here? His half-degree in biology wasn't exactly getting him anywhere in Owenco. It's literally the small-town halfway point between two of the closest big cities, and they weren't exactly exciting either. Louisville was nice, but not exactly the zoology-biology capital of the world. Cincinnati was appealing, but all of his old friends who moved there were out within the year, due to the absurdly high cost of living. But that was par for the course in the Midwest. Too many mouths to feed, not enough roofs for their heads, and just enough taken out of your paycheck to make sure you couldn't afford either. Ian managed to get out the word "probably" before Frank got up from his desk, his chair seeming to squeak in delight from the relief. Don't worry. I don't care about all that shit. All I know is that I've got a driver who can't stay under the speed limit, and I need a new one yesterday." Frank reached into a drawer in his desk and pulled out a hat and shirt, tossed it over, and added, "I'll settle for tonight, if you've got some time." Ian's head hit the desk and he exhaled. Bringing it back up, he solemnly replied, "Thanks, man. I really needed a gig. You are the last place I've gone today." Frank beamed. "Unreal, isn't it? Throw that hat on, and let's get you started." Ian emerged from the bathroom, clad in his brand-new bright green shirt. He turned the corner as he threw on the hat, and collided headfirst into a familiar, body spray-scented chest. Cody picked him up all too easily. The guy was at least 2 feet taller than him. "This is gonna be sick, dude!" With what remaining breath Ian had, he chided, "You do realize that I'll have to be in the store for us to hang out, right?" Cody sat him down and opened the employee door behind him. "Well," he responded, "the driver and the line guy typically close together. You'll be doing dishes and shit with me. We can blast whatever we want over the sound system." Ian and Cody went way back. After high school, the gentle Afro-Hispanic giant was Ian's roommate for a year before moving in with his girlfriend. After that, they'd bounce from workplace to workplace, one getting the other hired whenever the need would arise. They looked out for each other. One notable reason for Ian was because somehow, no matter what situation he was in, Cody always managed to have weed. Ian still thinks his mattress is just filled with the stuff. "Well, why don't you give me the tour, man?" Ian asked as he prepared himself for the fast food nightmare he was going to have to work in for the next few months. Cody grabbed the door, made a grand bow, and waved his friend in. "After you, senor." Ian was taken aback. Contrary to what he usually expected from other workplaces he'd spent his life in, the kitchen was spotless, almost unnaturally clean. Admittedly, there was a bit of buildup on the grill and oven, but nearly every other item in this white-tiled workspace was shiny, like new. "Holy hell," Ian couldn't help but mutter aloud. Cody, walking over to the grill, started to explain as an earbud went up to its normal place. "Oh, yeah, we gotta make it look like this every night. It's not that tough." Ian was already imagining nights wasted mopping floors, but then he noticed the drains on the corner of each wall. Ian spoke up. "Wait, do we just sweep, mop, and that's it?" "That and this, baby," Cody chimed in while aiming something at him. Ian had about half a second to sidestep before a stream of pressurized water filled the space where his chest was. "Asshole!" Ian managed to get out in a whispered scream while the water drained away. Laughing, he continued, "But that's amazing. We can clean and close this place in like half an hour." "That's the idea," came a familiar voice from out of the office in the hallway. As Frank came back in, Ian realized he was genuinely happy he'd gotten the job. This was going to be cake. Frank brought his hands together and continued, "Now, who's going to get the register?" Oh shit. Ian had neglected the fact that the restaurant was actually open. Before he could react, someone was quickly darting behind him. Sorry, didn't hear the bell. Welcome to Unreal. How can I help you?" Ian turned. The girl was pushing buttons on the screen at a learned pace and somehow managing to pay attention to the list of items the woman was ordering. He was a little embarrassed. Frank gave him a reassuring nod. Don't worry about it. Go watch Molly, learn the POS, then stick with Cody for a bit and learn the line. If a delivery comes up, it's all you. I'll be over in the office putting you in the system. Oh, and I'll give you a card machine before you dash out with an order." Ian had his hand out immediately. "Frank, thanks for the gig. Seriously, this is going to work out just fine." Frank made a fist instead. Ian responded with a bump in kind, and Frank, seemingly imitating the terrible boss Ian was expecting, clapped and growled, "Now get to work!" "And if that doesn't work, turn it off and on again," Molly stated. As Ian absorbed most of the information she was saying, he was trying to get a read on this girl. She was as plain as she could be, wearing the same uniform Ian was. However, on closer examination, her black hair was cut short under the hat, seemingly buzzed on one side. A single septum piercing and a small tattoo behind one ear were the only other features that stood out immediately. She seemed cool, collected, but there was something else that he just couldn't place. "Hey, Space Cadet, it says made you look." Ian snapped back to the store in that moment and stuttered. Sorry, I was just, She let out an exasperated sigh and almost recited, "If you're thinking about asking me out, don't bother. I don't shit where I eat, and my girlfriend can definitely beat you up." Ian let the epiphany show on his face. That's what I was trying to figure out. I didn't want to assume, and I sure as hell didn't want to ask. He was only half lying. He couldn't really tell. Ian wasn't exactly a good profiler. The answer, though, was apparently all she needed. "Oh, thank Christ, you're not a total dickhead." Don't worry, man. That's the nicest someone's found out in a while, believe it or not." Ian smiled and jokingly asked, What happened to the last guy?" Molly took off her hat and shook her hair out. Ian was hit with a momentary pang of testosterone-fueled jealousy. Molly's girl was lucky. "Well, Frank says it was speeding out on the 34, but really, I'm the reason you're working tonight." Ian drew the picture in his head. "Oh, that would do it, wouldn't it?" he posited aloud. Did he just not get the idea? Molly was assembling another brown bag out of the many thousands of brown bags she must have made coming out of this place. But, again, impressively, continued talking. Yeah, after the last time when he suggested a threesome, Frank brought it up with management. He was out quick. He said not to tell anybody, but if you're going to be working here, you might as well know. She plopped the bag down at the delivery station and pulled out her phone. She gave him a wink and a punch on the arm, and followed up, "Chop chop, bag boy." Ian realized what this meant. He got out a quick, "Don't work too hard," before heading over to the line. Cody was hard at work, his headphone blasting one ear with whatever brightly dyed wrapper was trending this week, and his arm slowly working a spatula under a couple browning pucks of Unreal's meat substitute. You know, they say it's just jackfruit and beans, but I swear this shit's gotta be made of some kind of fat. Look at it! Cody had a knack for being able to know when someone was coming up behind him. It made countless pranks impossible for Ian. He looked over at the griddle and saw that, yes, it did look very meaty for a plant-based burger. "I guess that's the Unreal part," Ian sarcastically quipped while reaching for the bag of frozen patties Cody was pulling from. He searched for whatever text he could find and found the ingredients list. Cody wasn't wrong. Jackfruit was at the top of the list. Black beans were next, followed by a list of cellulose from things like bamboo, potatoes, yeast. The list went on. Somewhere down the line, as Ian was muttering the ingredients to himself, Cody interjected, "Ugh, really? Oh man, that's gross, dude." Ian went back a few lines and listed aloud. Potato starch, rice flour, sodium erythorbate? That? Cody quickly confirmed. "Yeah, that's it. That's the shit they put in hot dogs. It's made of fucking earthworms, man. I'll never eat one again." Ian was searching on his phone immediately. He knew this scenario all too well. Cody also had a tendency to believe anything he heard, and Ian was a stickler for getting his facts straight. "Nope, hate to break it to you, buddy, but it's literally just a chemical byproduct." He held his phone so Cody could take a look, but something on the grill caught his eye. The shimmering patty that Cody was browning. Something was off with it. The oil sweating from it was supposed to mainly be vegetable oil, but he'd never seen it like this. It seemed less like cooking oil and more like gasoline. The bubbling hit it well, but after looking closer, it appeared to change color. Like a puddle of gas left by a faulty fuel line in an old car. There was something almost hypnotic about it. "Is that burning?" Ian said as he cleared his racing mind. Cody quickly flipped the patty by sheer muscle memory and said, No, they just bubble like that when they're done." He pressed down on the spatula for a few seconds and continued. "Weird. I always thought that earthworm thing was true." Ian stagnated for a moment, still slightly mesmerized by the translucent oil. "If you think that's crazy, you should spend a night on Wikipedia. You'll be a changed man in the morning." Molly popped around the corner from the deep fryer with a paper sack of fries. She dropped them in the bag, and Ian asked, Are you seeing this?" and pointed at the griddle. "The oil?" She peered over and replied, "Yeah, it bubbles up like that when they're done." Ian was confused. You mean that doesn't look like a bath bomb to you?" He polished his glasses and looked again. The colors were gone. Ian's mind thought of several different scenarios in that moment, but just chalked it up to being tired. Maybe there was a smudge on his glasses. Maybe there was some chemical reaction happening he wasn't aware of. But before he could think any further, Frank tapped him on the shoulder. He handed Ian a pocket-sized pin pad and $30 in cash, the standard kit for a delivery driver. He took both, grabbed the bag, and checked the address as he was walking out of the store. "Drive safe," Frank hollered as the door shut behind him. Ian took a moment to breathe in his seat. Maybe the job hunt had exhausted him, and he'd just agreed to a 6-hour workday at the end of it. Yeah, that makes sense, he thought. He lazily tossed his seatbelt over his shoulder and popped it in. Once more, he checked the address as he put key to ignition. God damn it! Ian couldn't help but scream after slapping the off button on his stereo. He nearly growled as he brought his hands to his face. He'd forgotten to turn down the volume before he got out of the car. Gathering himself, he put the car in reverse and pulled out of the lot. As he turned the corner, he realized a truck was backing in by the rear. Schultz Farms. He recognized that logo. He had passed the place one night while delivering for a pizza joint in the next town over. Weird, he thought to himself, but that must be where the veggies come from. As he pulled through, the driver was lowering the ramp. Oddly, he looked a lot like Frank. Maybe a bit older. Father? Maybe Frank's brother. As Frank came out of the back entrance and threw his arms out in a jubilant greeting, the driver did the same, and they met for a quick hug. Either would probably make sense, Ian thought, and he realized he didn't really care. He readjusted the stereo's volume and headed off to the 34 intersection. As Ian drove away, Frank was observing carefully, but not so subtly. One hand was shielding the evening sun, and the other was waving proudly to his new delivery boy. "New hire?" the driver ribbited in a bullfrog drawl. "Yep, just started tonight," Frank replied. As Ian accelerated towards the long stretch that is the 34, Frank turned around to face the driver. Now, Frank's demeanor changed. The cheery facade melted away. It was time for business. "What's our inventory situation looking like?" The driver was already placing a few boxes of lettuce and tomato on the small dolly. "We'll be fine for the moment. Demand hasn't exactly been high out here." The driver popped the dolly back, ready to move the produce inside. "I'm more interested in the kid, Frank. How is he on the uptake?" Frank was visibly nervous. "The kid's a spaz, Jim. I asked him what he wanted to work here for, and you know what he said?" Jim didn't give any indication of response or interest, other than a slight raise in one eyebrow. "Money," Frank spat, laughing. "He's honest, you gotta give him that." Jim sighed as he began pushing the dolly. "He's gotta be better than that Drew kid. That little shit had a mouth on him. He could have exposed the entire deal." Frank seemed uneasy at the mention of Drew's name. "Drew wasn't exactly the best employee for sure, but I like this kid. He's just trying to make his way through college." As the pair entered the back and shuffled around to the fridge, Jim's curiosity began to show. "What kinda degree?" Frank still had Ian's application on the clipboard, behind the produce order form. He read aloud as he let the heavy metal door shut behind him. "Says here he's 4 semesters into biology, over at JCTC. Jim finished putting the last box on a wire rack in the walk-in fridge and dropped his shoulders a bit. Slowly, as he spoke, he put together his brother's idiocy. "This so-called spaz that you hired is a biology major." Jim kicked the dolly over and grabbed Frank by the collar. "You absolute asshat!" Jim snarled in Frank's face. "This little shit stain could be the biggest threat to this entire operation, and you gave him a goddamn hat! You let him waltz right in!" Jim was too close, and Frank couldn't budge. Jim was about to let a new string of expletives out of his mouth, but what came out was a hoarse, gravelly cough. Jim's knees buckled. Frank managed to hold on long enough to support his brother. "Jim," he said concernedly, "I don't think he's that observant. Plus, we're going to need the help. You can't keep doing this. When was the last time you ate?" Jim looked up, almost defeated, at his younger brother. He nodded slowly and muttered, "Shut up and help me up." As Frank and his brother hobbled back out to the truck, something eluded both of their observation. Unbeknownst to both of them, Jim's coughing fit had expelled something from his throat. A few drops of blood lingered on the fridge floor, shimmering with color and metallic hue. As the automatic light from the fridge began to dim, the blood began to boil. Then, it evaporated without a trace.